talk Feminine Identity According to the New Testament and the Church. Due to technical difficulties during the live presentation of this talk, I'll be giving a summarized version, and you'll have the PDF available for the full text and the full images that accompany this. So the question of feminine identity according to the New Testament and the Church was presented here following that of feminine identity in the Tanakh. And so we can say that between Jewish and Christian understandings of the feminine identity, we have points of continuity and elements of innovation. The main point of continuity we find are both in the heroines of the Hebrew Bible, but also in the figure of Eve and in the lived experience of being women. So one of the principal elements here is that we think of both Eve, Sarah, Rebecca, Rahab, Hannah, Deborah, Esther, including Susanna and the mother of the Maccabees, Abigail and Miriam, the sister of Moses, who were featured in the first talk. I'd also like to draw attention to the simplicity of the figure of Eve, of the gift of being women. And so you'll find in the PowerPoint, the PDF version of the PowerPoint, a Roman sarcophagus of a Christian couple. And so this is the spiritual legacy of a husband and wife who were Christians in Rome around 320. And so it depicts both the husband and the wife, but then it also has Jesus in the center with Adam and Eve. So we took a look at a detailed element of that in which Eve is being created from the side of Adam, and God the Father is blessing her, and Christ as Logos is presenting her, and around the corner even God the Holy Spirit is present. So it's also an image of the Trinity, which is very unusual in early Christian art. At that time we made a note of John Paul II's powerful quote that the Church desires to give thanks to the Most Holy Trinity for the mystery of woman and for every woman, for all that constitutes the eternal measure of her feminine dignity, for the great works of God, which throughout human history have been accomplished in her and through her. That's from Mulieris Dignitatem 31. Then, in addition to the existential common experience of being women, we looked briefly at Psalm 139:14. I shall thank you for in an awesome, wondrous way I was fashioned. Your works are wonderful, my soul knows it well. Something of the quality of being women as a gift that we receive and as a mystery that we ourselves discover over time. We also briefly touched on the role of Eve as being made to solve and to cure and to heal existential loneliness in Adam. And in an extended way, I made the proposal and presented an image by Elliot Erwitt of the existential loneliness that the woman staves off in all human beings in her maternity. So with that theme, we then moved from Eve to the New Testament. And once we're talking about the New Testament, there's another woman who takes central stage, and that is Mary of Nazareth. There's no way in which we can be introduced to or know Jesus of Nazareth without his mother. And so in the text, you'll find a discussion about Mary, the variety of things she did as a mother, as a virgin, as betrothed to Saint Joseph, in all of the courageous moments of her life, the decision-making at the Annunciation, and also sharing and witnessing the suffering of her son for the redemption of the world at the foot of the cross. There also, from the letter to women, John Paul II affirms, the Church sees in Mary the highest expression of the feminine genius, and she finds in her a source of constant inspiration. So that's another area that we can consider a greater length in your prayer and your meditation and thoughts. The question of the highest expression of the feminine genius is in fact in Mary of Nazareth. She is the woman who battles with the dragon after all. In the next part of the talk, there's a discussion about some of the other women that are found in the New Testament and the ways in which Jesus interacts with them. Both women who are named, like Mary Magdalene, the hostess here in Magdala, as well as the unnamed women, like the Samaritan woman at the well in John 4, the Syrophoenician woman, the woman with a hemorrhage. So these are other women who experience his kindness, his love, and we can say how different it was to have his gaze upon them, one which was not seeking any kind of intention, desire, exploitation, but one of love and one of a knowing creator and one of a savior. A very different thing. In the letter of John Paul II to women, in number 3, we'll also find a central text which reads that when it comes to setting women free from every kind of exploitation and domination, the gospel contains an ever-relevant message which goes back to the attitude of Jesus Christ himself. Transcending the established norms of his own culture, Jesus treated women with openness, respect, acceptance, and tenderness. In this way, he honored the dignity which women have always possessed, according to God's plan and in his love. If we take this passage and we look back again at the sarcophagus and at the tender depiction of the little Eve, she's already a woman. She's being created as a woman. And in the next register below, you'll see Mary with the child Jesus on her lap receiving the visit of the Magi. So we have this mystery of woman and mystery of man in relation to the incarnation, in relationship to the Logos. So I spoke about Mary, I spoke about Eve, and then in the second half, to discuss the question of feminine identity in the life of the church, I chose to present, in lieu of statistics or policy or canon law or encyclicals, as beautiful as they are, I chose instead to present 2 Catholic women of more modern times who have an unexpected relationship, we could say an unexpected friendship even. I presented Dorothy Day, the 20th century American social activist, who is in fact a servant of God at this time. Her cause has been introduced in the Archdiocese of New York. She was born in 1897 and died in 1980. And alongside her, perhaps someone who would not be expected to be found there, St. Therese of the Child Jesus, Virgin and Doctor of the Church, born in 1873 and died in 1897. Entered the Carmel when she was 15 and died when she was 24. So I spoke a little bit about the life of Dorothy Day, the conversion that she went through, and then especially I focused on the book that she wrote about St. Therese of the Child Jesus, a book she wrote in 1960. In the preface to that book, the text is included in both the handout and the full passage of the paper. She describes how she first heard about St. Therese of the Child Jesus when she had just given birth to her daughter, Tamar Teresa, in Bellevue Hospital, when you could pay $30 flat fee for 10 days in the maternity ward. Sounds like a good deal. It sounds like a good plan. And so she has this encounter with a far less educated Catholic woman at a time when she herself is not yet Catholic, and hears about this little Carmelite. And at the same time, the passage from Dorothy Day will be very useful to any of you, if you have a chance to see it, because she's also describing her experience of motherhood. A woman who had been divorced, a woman who had been through an abortion, a woman who had been involved in the sexual liberation of the 1920s, which was also the time when Planned Parenthood was founded. Margaret Sanger is a figure of the 1920s. So it's quite beautiful to hear her describing the powerful experience of maternity, which moved her to the transcendental, moved her to prayer and to God. So that is a scenario to share. And then there are a few passages also of John Paul II giving thanks to the different women in the life of the church, giving thanks to women who are mothers, giving thanks to women who are sisters and daughters, and then giving thanks to consecrated women. In that last phase of the talk, we transition to St. Therese of the Child Jesus herself. So I introduce her a little bit, especially in a Jewish and Christian women's encounter like we've had. She's not necessarily such a familiar figure. In fact, she's quite an unusual figure. And she's an unusual figure even among Catholics if we take her seriously, because she's the youngest doctor of the church at the age of 24, one of 4 women doctors of the church. And so if we're interested in authority of teaching and the voice of women, and St. Therese, although she's called the Little Flower and stands out for her gentleness and her little way and promising to send flowers on the earth, she's tough as nails. And so you don't really want to underestimate her strength and the strength of her theological insights, the strength of her virtue, and the promises she has made out of love, to all of us, actually. So in the context of introducing her, very briefly, Joan of Arc, the figure of Joan of Arc, her cause was being brought forth in France during that time. Then I read the text that you will find in the passage in which St. Therese discovers her vocation in the life of the church, looking at the different figures of the apostles and the martyrs and all the different figures, and saying, I still haven't found my place. But at last she discovered that love itself, to be love, in the heart of the church was her vocation. In the heart of the church, my mother, I will be love. And that this little way that she proposes, to be love, and to be that wherever and whenever we are in the smallest of things, becomes an inspiration not only to Dorothy Day, this great social activist, but also to Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who chose the name Therese as her religious name in honor of Saint Therese of the Child Jesus and invoking her example. And then finally touched briefly on also married women in the life of the church, mothers in the life of the church, who are called in the same way to be in the heart of the domestic church and in the heart of the ecclesial community, to be love. That this is something that is in no way lesser or weaker, but in fact is a mysterious strength that perhaps feminine genius is especially prepared to undertake and has in fact undertaken in the history of the church, in the history of the world. So there's some interesting images of these figures. So we've moved through 4 women, Eve, Mary, the new Eve, Dorothy Day, St. Therese the Child Jesus, women who wrote. It is said that St. Therese the Child Jesus is the saint who has, and I wonder, she's probably neck and neck with Augustine or something on this, but that research and books written about St. Therese the Child Jesus continue to abound. And when Dorothy Day wrote her book in 1960, she had many friends say, don't write another book about Therese. It's already been done. You can't add to it. And she said, you're never finished saying things about holiness, which was also a quotation about Our Lady that I had mentioned at the beginning, De Maria numquam satis, concerning Mary, one is never finished. So to close this summary version, I encourage you to read the full text. We can remember those words that John Paul II applied to Mary, being the fullness of the feminine genius. So I invite you to take a look at the full text, and I'm very grateful to have been here at Magdala. Thank you.